I'd like to thank you guys for making it to the very last end of the conference. My name is Karen Randall, and I've been the, quote, boots on the ground, the front line for this battle for at least 4 years. I thought I was going to move from a really busy place like Detroit and kind of move to a place where I thought I would retire. I would kind of gradually ease my way out of the academic arena, and I found myself moving to the Napa Valley of cannabis. Unfortunately, when I moved there, it was 2013. This is my neighbor's house a year ago in August. So my neighbor is a Cuban cartel. We actually went to watch it. This is my photo. All these photos are mine. I borrowed one from a friend. So we went to watch it. They told me I could watch this, but I had to stand on the side because they were heavily armed. I said I would render aid to anybody with a uniform, but not the Cuban people. So this is the second time this house has been taken down as a Cuban cartel house. My neighborhood is filled with houses that are grow houses now. The governor promised we would have less illegal grows, and we've just been inundated with illegal grows. So I'm here to dispel the myth to some point. This is our school district, District 60 from Pueblo. Recently there was an ad in the paper that said, and it went nationwide, there was a college in Pueblo that published a survey that said homelessness in Pueblo was caused by high utility bills and not because people were moving from marijuana. That ad, that article unfortunately went nationwide, and additionally they said, oh, not only did the homeless there because they can't afford utility bills, I was thinking I couldn't believe it cost that much to heat your tent, and people were saying, they took it further and they said, oh, Pueblo was saved by pot. So I just before I start my lecture want to dispel some of the myths. District 60 is our school district. Last year in the 8th grade, they report 47% of 8th graders were chronically absent. Absenteeism is 18 days or more missing from a school year. So 47%, almost half of our 8th graders were missing last year. They were missing enough school to be noticeable. This year they were happy because the total was down to 27%, but they added in the elementary school kids who were getting there pretty much on time. So 27%, 1/4 of our kids. Imagine any school district in any affluent neighborhood that would say, I have 27% of my kids missing. We looked at some schools in the southern part of Colorado because everything is swept down below Colorado Springs, and they're very small, very poor farming towns in southern Colorado where they're being just crushed by the pot tsunami. And we have towns in southern Colorado where the teachers report that over 50% of the kids in the classrooms are homeless. The teachers now, many of the schools stay open 24 hours a day so that they can bathe, clothe, feed, and educate these kids. And those statistics aren't getting out. And our governor and our politicians are saying we are making a ton of tax money. Here's a thing that I actually didn't know until about 6 months ago. The tax revenue that Colorado earns, the way it was voted into our Constitution, those funds are discretionary funds. So that means Hickenlooper can decide to go where that money goes. A portion that comes to Pueblo is decided by our county commissioner. They can decide where it goes. They put a small amount of money into scholarships. And last year, our county commissioner thought that it would be really important in a town that doesn't have a homeless shelter, in a town whose homeless outreach center had to close, in a town who has 47% of 8th graders missing. He thought it would be really important to spend the tax revenue on golf carts. So he bought golf carts for the town. And I bet you all didn't know that, isn't that right? But you heard about all the tax money that Colorado is bringing in. My county commissioner, who likens us as the Napa Valley of cannabis, bought golf carts. So to move on, now that I've made my political statement, I'm going to move on just to a few cases I've seen in the ER. This man I saw probably a week and a half ago. He was a 19-year-old, so not old enough to be legal yet. And he came to the ER, and it was probably his 4th or 5th ER visit between my hospital and the other hospital in town that's now closing. And he was describing seizure-like activity, and it was really unclear whether these are real seizures or not. But he proudly told me that he was smoking, he was down to smoking 1,500 milligrams of THC a day. So, and he had atypical recurrent seizures, so being the good doctor I was, after everything was negative, he got another expensive workup, CT, blood work, an evaluation, a neurology referral. And at the end of this visit, I thought, oh, you know what, I'm going to give him and his family some information. I printed some articles about how THC, especially in doses like this, can actually cause seizures. And I presented it to him, and I handed it to him. And at that very moment in time, I became the stupidest doctor in America. Because it was just absurd to suggest that I would even think that his seizures could be caused by marijuana, because the paper says it stops seizures. Right there in the ad, right? This was a full-page ad in January. They couldn't even spell seizures right, but it stops them. It also treats cancers. And so not only are we dealing with that, we're dealing with an incredible overload of false advertising. Here's some more quick stories, and then we'll be done. I saw an 8-week-old infant, and I'm here to say this is how our city's changed. I had dinner with the lady who runs the homeless outreach center. And we happen to be looking out, and we see both of the same people. She sees them because they come in for assistance in the homeless arena, and I see them in the ER because they come in for problems with medical problems. So we looked out, and we saw a couple walking on the sidewalk. And she said, oh, I know them. And I said, oh, I know them. But I didn't know their social backgrounds. This was a homeless couple that already had 3 kids taken away from them. And because our DSS is so busy, that couple was awarded their 8-week-old baby back. This is what we've come to. Our DSS, our Department of Social Services, actually buys at Walmart lock boxes so parents can hide their drugs from their kids. And so they're sending an 8-week-old baby back to parents who are homeless. So I happened to see another kid. He was 8 weeks old. His parents brought him in for respiratory difficulty, and this baby was really having a hard time breathing. So he gave him breathing treatments, and he got an x-ray, and I looked up the history, and this 8-week-old baby had really, by virtue of the fact that his mother smoked pot through her entire pregnancy, he'd really smoked pot for his entire fetal life, and now he was smoking pot again because the entire family smelled like marijuana. It's not a secret when somebody's smoking pot, you can tell. And so, what do I do for this kid? I don't have a place to put him, and you have to admit him, but I can only admit him for a day so his lungs clear up, but he's going back to the same environment. So I see this every day, and it becomes a point where you go, I'm really sad about being so hopeless here. I saw, not too long ago, a 9-year-old kid with an incredibly bad case of a rare congenital skin disorder. It looked like the worst case of eczema I'd ever seen. And this kid had serious, complicated medical problems. And along with this, really, from head to toe, she was covered with a really bad excoriated skin. It was oozing, and she was wide awake and talking, but in a lot of distress. She also had an associated heart disease that made her heart back up, and she had congestive heart failure, and she had pneumonia at the time. And I realized that had we never seen her before, and she's a chronically ill child. Well, it turns out that the parents had moved to Pueblo because we're cheaper and we're in the Napa Valley. They moved away from, we don't have a pediatric center in our city, so they moved away from high-level pediatric care to kind of a rural town so that they could buy CBD for their child. I saw her, she was an extremist. She wasn't breathing very well. I ended up flying her up to Denver in a helicopter, and she died 12 hours later because she wasn't getting her medical care. She was getting CBD for her skin because we know that it treats skin disorders, right? The last case I have up here is a 16-year-old male that we recently saw. He is 16 years old, a really big kid, 6'4", 240, no family history of anything, no psychiatric history, went to North Carolina for a spring break, had a psychotic episode. The parents said, well, it's so bad they felt like they couldn't even fly him home. So they said, we're going to drive out to North Carolina. They picked him up. They brought him to our hospital. Our adolescent unit is off-site. We saw him. He seemed okay at the time. Brought him in. We cleared him. He went to the adolescent unit. At that time, the only thing he was positive for, and the only thing he's ever been positive for, is THC. At the adolescent unit, he had another psychotic episode. He assaulted 3 healthcare workers, and he stabbed our security guard. Police were called because they were off-site. He got tased 3 times and it didn't faze him. And so what we're seeing, and what we're seeing a tremendous amount, is an incredibly violent patient, and he's typical for this. This child was, because we have no money for treatment, he was sent home in less than 2 weeks. I saw him 2 weeks later. He was in handcuffs in police custody because he had gone home. He assaulted family members bad enough to give them bleeds in their heads, and they were being admitted to ICU at the main hospital. I saw him at an off-site ER. And so, again, nothing ever showed but THC, and there was no family history of any kind of problems. We are seeing in our hospital, which is the 3rd busiest hospital in Colorado, we're seeing an incredible amount of violent people. So we're seeing violence, and what I really see is the combination of high-dose THC and methamphetamine produces an incredibly violent patient, and so much so that I created a violent patient team in the hospital so that we could have a good response team. And the other thing that we've done in our hospital, we have now a drug sniffing dog in our hospital. So some counties believe we're okay. Our county didn't legalize it, so not in my backyard. This is not happening in my county. So I was doing some outreach work. We went to a little town in Lamar, which is a poor farming community. We drove all the way out there. All the way out there, there were grow houses. And you can tell, it's the barns with all the lights glowing in the middle of the night, and you go, gosh, I wonder what they're growing. All the way there and all the way back, we saw the barns lit up, and we get to Lamar, and the coach, we did a presentation, and the coach comes up to me afterwards, and he said, do you know what? He goes, this is what's happening here. He goes, parents of these kids, which is a poor farming community, he goes, they drive to Pueblo, they buy pot, they don't know whether it's either legal or illegal. They come back to Lamar, and they have their kids sell it at high school. So we have, in essence, turned entire families into drug pushers. The ad the article right here, I don't know, many of you saw it, it was on social media. This was a 17-year-old kid who Facebooked himself and then put it on Facebook. He was having his 2.5 to 3-year-old nephew in the back smoke pot while they were driving down the road. He's like, get you some, have some pot. And the sad part was this kid, this 3-year-old, in this, you can Google it, in the film, the kid knows how to hold the joint. And that, to me, was the saddest part of everything, that this 3-year-old kid could appropriately hold a joint. So I sat and I watched 324, and I watched these kids give speeches, and I listened to what they're saying, and they're not just asking for gun control, they're asking for us to provide a safer life for them. They want to go to school and they want to learn. And I listened to these kids who were able to make this kind of a movement. And there was an 11-year-old girl who spoke, and some of us get afraid talking in front of 50 people. This little 11-year-old girl talked in front of 500,000 people and gave an incredible speech. And if we don't keep THC out of their environment, they're not going to be able to do that. We're going to steal their clarity, we're going to steal their vision, and we're going to give them no future. So my plea, and the reason I keep doing this, is because we need to allow them to have that vision in the future. There are leaders, they're coming up, let's let them have this vision. I just want to say the bottom picture was my Walmart less than a week ago. If you look at the car on the left-hand side, that's the dad is sleeping in the car. All their stuff is on the top. The car was from Florida. On the right-hand side, the tall woman is the woman figure, so I assume mother. The little kid on the bottom is the 10-year-old, and they were out begging for money on a school day. And so you look at the difference between visions, and this kid's childhood is being stolen from him, not only his childhood, but his entire lifetime, because he's not being educated and he's not being skilled. And so these parents are developing their kid to be dependent on a benevolent government to take care of his needs for the rest of his life. And so that's why I fight. I fight for these guys. It's not fair to them. We need to provide them a safe neighborhood. So anything you can do to join the fight, I'm welcome to. I'm happy to come and help you wherever you are, whatever state. We need to win the battle against THC. I'm here to say the glowing reports from Colorado are lies. That's it.